So what do we make of it all? Well, I have to say, the reaction that I've had on the street from people today is, at last, they're doing something. And there are three big things they're doing. Number one, the Royal Navy are taking over operations in the English Channel. Number two, Linton on Ouse up in North Yorkshire is going to become a big reception centre and camp. But the really big one is that those young men that come here illegally will be sent to Rwanda and they'll be processed there. Now, what does all of this mean? It's important because the numbers that are coming are rocketing. 600 yesterday. Haven't got the official number for today, but I'm guessing it's about 500. Indeed, as Boris Johnson was speaking, in a little village of Greatstone, about 3.5 miles away from Lydd Airport, at that very moment in time, a dinghy finished up on the sand, people going off into the village, and Border Force in the end going to pick them up. Ironically, whilst Boris Johnson was there, a similar distance away, the Dungeness lifeboat was on yet another shout out and it broke down. So Boris, when he was there, saw a fair bit of chaos around him. It matters for lots of reasons. I could be very, very cynical and say to you the timing of all of this is because the local elections are coming up on May the 5th. I could be even more cynical and say it's because the first fine's been issued to the Prime Minister and there are more to come. But you know what? Tonight's programme, our special on the Crisis Image channel, is not about that. We want to actually understand what is really going on and whether it's going to work, because it strikes me that's important. Now, what do I think about this? Let's put it this way. If, and I think there is an if, but if we do see many hundreds of young undocumented males who've crossed the English Channel being flown off to Rwanda, that will, certainly in the short term, act as something of a deterrent. After all, why would you pay a trafficker €3,000, €5,000, whatever the going rate may be, if you thought in short order you'd finish up in Rwanda? After all, it's Treasure Island, isn't it, that you want to come to? So it could be effective in the short term. But here's my real worry and my real concern, and it's this. The Australians started off going down this route 10 years ago when the boats started coming from Indonesia, an offshore processing centre. But the problem was that within a couple of months, there were stories of abuse, there were stories of neglect, there were unpleasant tales coming out of those reception centres, and the whole world condemned Australia for being barbaric. There are already over 100,000 people in Rwanda in these type of centres that have come from other countries, and you can believe it or not, but some aid workers say conditions in those camps aren't great. All it would take is to hear of a couple of cases of abuse, of intimidation, and suddenly, yes, the lefty lawyers, as Boris likes to call them, the human rights lawyers, would be in action. And just think about it. You know, since the European Convention on Human Rights came into British law, it's difficult for us to even deport terrorists, let alone young men who we've no idea whether they have criminal records or not. It's going to be difficult. I can't see this in the long term working. I think Brexit hasn't actually been completed. I don't think until we leave the European Convention on Human Rights, till we leave the European Court, till we genuinely establish sovereignty over these issues, I don't think we'll be able to deal with this problem. I still think that actually in the end, we're simply going to have to pick people up on the channel, fingerprint them, try and find out who they are, and basically take them back to France, however much the French president screams and shouts. However, I'm going to raise half a cheer for the government today. They have at least done something, and it might, if they carry on with it, it might have a bit of a deterrent effect.